Yo guys, what's going on? My name is HackingIsFreedom and welcome to the 23rd episode of What Was Cut, a series where we take a look at what exactly was cut from our favorite games. Today we're going to be talking about Call of Duty Black Ops 2, another one of my all-time favorite CODs, and of course with zombies being my favorite mode, I dumped so many hours into the zombies Easter eggs. I obviously had all the DLC as well, and my most favorite zombies map still to this day has to be Mob of the Dead. I've always been fascinated with Alcatraz itself, and of course the infamous escape from Alcatraz. I'm pretty sure nothing to this day was more elaborate than the Alcatraz escape. Anywho, let's
shut up, clock in, and load up,
and figure out what was cut. Textures are up first, and surprisingly, there isn't that many. Unsurprisingly, there's quite a lot of textures left over from the first Black Ops. So, with that being said, these first three textures are underbarrel attachment icons for the flamethrower, grenade launcher, and the shotgun. These are obviously leftovers from the first Black Ops, but I'm guessing the developers had plans to add the flamethrower and shotgun attachments at some point, but later felt it didn't really fit the new style of weapons. The new tube is obviously the only one that made it into the final game. There's also three unused created class icons for the Thrustodyne Aerodynamics Model 27, the ray gun, and oddly, the Python revolver. The jet gun was most likely going to be a callback Easter egg to the first Black Ops, where you could find a thunder gun in the campaign. And same with the ray gun. It seems there may have been plans to add a ray gun Easter egg in the campaign similar to the one seen in World at War. The Python, on the other hand, is a bit unknown. However, my guess is it was probably just used as a placeholder icon for the Executioner. Two icons of perks called Intruder and Lockbreaker were cut from the campaign. However, I believe they were merged into the Access Kit perk. Interestingly, these seem to be from a later build, as you can also see these two perks here in the Greenlight build, which is the earliest build of Black Ops 2 we have. You can also see a few other early perk icons here. There's an icon for an ammo pack found in the files for the weapon attachments. I'm not sure if this was going to function similar to the Bandolier perk, or if this would have been something you needed to deploy. There's also an icon for a bipod that was supposed to be a weapon attachment as well. This seems like it was cut super early in development in favor of the laser sight. All four of the campaign difficulty icons are still left in the game files as well. I feel like they should have reused these, but just updated the art style a bit. I've always thought these icons specifically were so cool. The heat map image from the first Black Ops is still left over in the files of multiplayer. Again, I'm not entirely sure why this is here, but it may have been used as a placeholder for something. The team icon for Black Ops is also still in the game files, however, this was used in the Greenlight build. A camo called Massacre was supposed to be obtainable in multiplayer, although it's unknown what you would have needed to do to unlock it. With a name like Massacre, I'm assuming it was going to be unlocked with a certain amount of kills. This texture is of the loading screen for the zombies map Transit, and it's from an earlier build. You can see in this image that there's basically no lava on the roads, as this picture clearly shows the bus in the town section. I'm guessing the decision to add lava to the map was a late one. This next texture is of a loading screen for a cut zombies game mode called Meat, where each team would fight over a severed zombie hand to gain points for their team. While a team has the zombie hand, the zombies will only be attracted to that team. The Meat item itself would have worked similar to the monkey bomb, as when you throw it, all the zombies would be attracted to it. However, it obviously wouldn't explode. This game mode seems very cool, and it would have played out similar to Oddball from Halo, as you just needed to hold on to the zombie hand the longest to win. Finally, we have an earlier version of the loading screen for Town, and it's similar to the earlier one for Transit, just without the bus and in much higher quality. Once again, there's no lava here, suggesting that the lava was a late addition. Next, we're going to quickly go over the cut game modes, as there's only a few. Starting with the game mode Hunted. I don't really need to explain this, as it seems to work exactly the same as the Hunted game mode from Call of Duty Ghosts. Although, if you don't know the game mode, or just don't remember, here's a quick explanation. You start off with a knife and combat axes, and you would have needed to collect various drops to upgrade your loadout. It's definitely interesting to see that they were considering this game mode a whole year before it debuted in Ghosts. This game mode called Hacker was cut pretty late in development, and it can still be accessed in the beta builds. It actually still has an icon left over in the final game, but here you can see an earlier version of it. This game mode seems to be a race to capture or hack as many of these AGRs as you can, as it would have been a free-for-all based game mode. It's completely unknown as to why this got cut, but I personally don't think it's all that interesting, so perhaps that's why it got cut. It just wasn't liked by testers. Resistance is sadly broken, as when the game mode loads, it gives me a dev-only calls error, although judging by the description, we can assume it would have played similar to Capture the Flag. Purgatory seems like an interesting one. It kind of plays like Search and Destroy and Dodgeball in a way. So you can see on the side of your screen it would display how many enemies are still alive and how many teammates are in Purgatory. Once you kill an enemy, a teammate will be randomly chosen to respawn. This actually seems like a really fun game mode, but you would need good communication with your team or things can go bad real quick. Lastly, we have Team Defender, and this would have played exactly like the one for Modern Warfare 3, but it seems a little broken in this beta build. Basically, you would need to hold on to the flag and get kills in order to score points. Models are up next, and there's not that many that went unused. But this first one is a COD staple. Default vehicle appears in this Call of Duty as a super simple cutout of a car. It doesn't even seem to have wheels. Even though this vehicle is only for testing purposes, the developers seem to change its appearance every once in a little while. Like in Modern Warfare 2, it's a futuristic looking tank thing. And in World at War, it's a car with Panzerschrecks on it. This model of a GAZ-63 or a GAZ-63 is loaded in the game's memory in the Suffer With Me campaign mission, so it's likely this vehicle was going to be used by the Panamanian Defense Forces in that mission. However, it was obviously cut early in development. I'm pretty sure this is the same model that can be seen in numerous early Call of Duties, like COD 1, 2, 3, and World at War. The model of the tactical insurgent from the first Black Ops is still in the game's files too, which I'm sure was used as a placeholder before the new model was made. There's a model of Richthofen's severed head in the files, and nobody really knows how it was going to tie into the zombie story, or even gameplay for that matter. The most we know is it was supposed to be used as a weapon in zombies. Nothing else is really known. I'm assuming this was planned for some sort of Easter egg that never got fully completed. Some animations are still left over, which is what you're seeing now. And there's also some voice lines, which I'll talk about later in the video. Finally, we have a model of the generic soldier you would see in Black Ops 1 when putting on face paint in the Create a Class menu. This is obviously just another leftover, but I do wonder if they had plans to bring back the face paint option. I thought that was a really cool feature back in the day. It's time for the cut weapons, and boy howdy do we have some cool ones here. Almost all of these weapons I'll be showing are from the Greenlight build, which is dated almost a year prior to launch. So we're going to start off with the SWAT, and it was honestly pretty complete in this early build. It just seems to have a bit of a different firing sound, and most notably the chrome finish. The only thing that seems to be unfinished is the world model. The textures seem to be incorrectly mapped. The TAC-45 was nearly complete in this early build as well, and it comes with a red dot attachment by default. The firing sound seems to be higher pitched in the final games. The gun's textures aren't quite fully complete, and when dropping it, it uses the M1911's pickup icon. It's also known as the FNP-45 in this build. The PDW was originally pretty different. It seems like in this early version, it was more like an assault rifle than an SMG. It has completely different iron sights, very basic textures, and when dropped on the ground, it uses a unique pickup icon. The Executioner was known as the Raging Judge in this build. It seems to be using the 5.7's firing sound, and when dropped, the model's incomplete. A version from a later build pretty much looks and sounds the exact same from the final game, but for some strange reason, it has Executioner written right on the gun. The MSMC must have been a late addition because it doesn't even exist in this build. The Black Ops 1 Uzi takes its place as a placeholder. The Death Machine was just a copy from the first Black Ops. It was most likely used as a placeholder as well. It seems like the XMR was a very late addition, as in this beta build, it's referred to as the AS-50, which of course was featured in Modern Warfare 3. However, you can see that the model itself looks pretty close to the final XMR's design. Fun fact though, the XMR is still referred to as the AS-50 in the final game's code, once again suggesting that the XMR was a late design choice. The B-23R was in a very early stage of development in this Greenlight build, using all of the M1911's assets. The RX-4 Storm is a pretty cool looking weapon, even in this early stage, and it was planned to be its own weapon. It even has a unique pickup icon and a Create a Class icon. However, it was later reworked into the FAL. The default weapon makes another appearance in this game, and this time, there is actually something strange about it. Unlike all the previous default weapons I've talked about in the other Call of Duties, this one in Black Ops 2 doesn't seem to have a model at all, which in turn crashes the game every time you drop it. Oddly enough, at this early point in development, the riot shield was fully complete. It just seems to use the pickup icon similar to the one seen in the Modern Warfare series. This next weapon is an earlier version of the SVU, and personally, I think it looks way better than the final games. I don't know why, but the final game's design of the SVU just looks really gross. Like, it's just a really ugly gun. There's not much to say about this version though, as it's pretty similar to the final SVU. The AN-94 is pretty complete as well. It just seems to have basic textures, a strange firing sound when shooting the first shot, and it uses the FAL's pickup icon. The Desert Tactical is actually a pretty nice looking sniper rifle. It seems to have basic texturing, really fast aim down sight speed, and a completely unique pickup icon. You may have noticed that this rifle uses the ballista's animations. That's because this was later reworked into the ballista. Although when dropped on the ground, the model reminds me of the WA-2000 from Modern Warfare 2. The LSAT was pretty much complete too. It just seems to be textured chrome. Although when dropping it on the ground, the model seems to be incomplete. The S-12's model was either very different or just very unfinished in the Greenlight build. It uses all of the SPAS-12's assets from the first Black Ops, including damage output, animations, and the pickup icon. The model itself just looks so whack though. This next one is very strange, as I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of it is. This weapon is called Base Weapon, and it seems to be the M4A1 from Modern Warfare 3. I'm guessing this is a placeholder weapon, similar to the default weapon? When dropping this weapon on the ground, it uses the Commando's pickup icon from Black Ops 1, and it seems to be missing its modeling for the magazine. There's also another M4A1 that's labeled as an M4A1, and it seems to be based off an older model of the gun. So again, I have no idea what that MW3 one was for. Anyway, this one seems to be almost the same one featured in MW2, but it uses the Commando's pickup icon and it has basic texturing. Here you can see I pick up both weapons, which means they are considered to be different weapons. The M1216 was actually almost complete in this early stage. It just has basic texturing and it uses the KSG's pickup icon. The M27 wasn't even made in this build yet, so the M16 was used as a placeholder instead, and it's an exact copy from the first Black Ops. This is what the M27 looked like in later beta builds. Its modeling was complete, but it didn't receive a texture quite yet. The SMR was known as the TOZ Sarich in this early build, and it somewhat resembles the final game's SMR, at least the first-person model does. Once you drop it on the ground though, it looks exactly like the XM8, but what's even more strange, it uses the pickup icon of the SVT from COD World at War. This weapon is known as the Gepard GM6 Lynx, and this was a super early version of the XMR. I actually really like this design, but it was most definitely scrapped early. As you can see, the reload animation is a bit broken, aiming down the sight is very awkward, and I'm actually not sure what pickup icon this is. It kinda looks like the WA2000s, but without a scope. If you know what pickup icon this is, please let me know in the comments. The CQB was another weapon that's basically fully complete. It only seems to have basic textures, as everything else, including the pickup icon, is complete. The Vector in this stage of development was literally taken straight out of Modern Warfare 2, but oddly, it's a 3-round burst by default. In a later beta build, the Vector got its model upgraded, it was obviously swapped to full auto, but for some reason, its textures weren't ready yet. This next weapon is very interesting. It's called Storm Sniper, and it seems this would have been a new type of weapon for the Call of Duty franchise at the time. This would have been a charging type of weapon, where you could hold down the shoot button, charge up to 5 shots, and then release them all in a single burst. You can also charge the shots individually. Like, say you only want to charge 3 shots, you can do that as well. This doesn't seem like a very practical weapon for the battlefield though, and when dropped, it uses the G11's pickup icon. This next weapon was cut super early in development, and it's only seen in the Greenlight build. This weapon here is known as the NS2000, or the Neosted 2000, and this was basically going to be an explosive shotgun. As you can see, not much work went into it as its first-person model is extremely broken. It's completely untextured, it reuses all of the China Lake's animations and its pickup icon. The last cut weapons are all explosive types, and there's really nothing interesting about them as they're all just reused assets, but I'll quickly go over them here. So we have an RPG from the first Black Ops, the XM25 from Modern Warfare 3 is here, and the final one being the crossbow, which doesn't have an explosive tip yet, and it's also from the first Black Ops. Onto the maps now, but sadly, there's no fully cut maps. Just early versions of the ones that we have in-game, but these are still super cool as there's not a lot of documentation out there for these early versions. Anywho, here's an early version of Overflow. It's basically complete with just some minor errors, like some objects on the map don't have proper collision. The biggest thing that sticks out obviously is there's no water here. I'm unsure if this was at a stage where the water physics or textures weren't fully complete yet, or possibly the developers were unsure of what to put in the background so they just left it blank. We may never know. This next map is an earlier version of Village, and you can see that the basic shape of the map was here, and really the only difference being is the objects used around the map, as well as the outskirts of the map. The outskirts of the map seem to be much bigger than the final games, and the map honestly feels very barren when running around. Meltdown is probably the most complete map in the bunch. Once again, the basic shape is here, and it's pretty similar to Village. The only changes here are the objects used around the map and the details outside of the map. Raid honestly feels completely different. Even though the shape is the same, the assets and the giant open space in the background makes this map feel extremely different. The only differences in the map layout seems to be around the garage area. Other than that though, everything is roughly the same. Drone I would say is the second most complete and similar to the final game. Not much is different here besides some assets, the lack of a background in any direction, and in certain spots of the map a weird lighting glitch happens. Hijacked is pretty cool, and it honestly reminds me of a blockout map just with texturing. Once again, from an aerial view, the map looks pretty similar, but once you go boots on ground, it feels so empty. And that's because it is. There's literally no objects in this map, all the rooms are basically empty, and a lot of the ship's roof isn't textured properly in various spots. Express honestly has a lot going on, mainly with some of the assets used here, but I'm going to go over those in my Oddities section. Mainly though, this map is pretty close to the final, with it just being more barren in some spots. I also believe the landscape outside of the map is far bigger than the final games, and the train that steamrolls through the area isn't developed yet. Carrier is another cool one, and another one that I'll go into more detail in the Oddities section, but to start off with, the loading screen actually looks pretty cool for an early map. And from above, the layout is pretty close to the final version. However, the objects used and the amount of them are definitely different. Like in the center of the map, in the final game this is a pretty open space, but here you're completely covered by debris. There's also this big hole that I don't remember being in the final version. Slums is another map that was pretty close to being complete. Once again, the only difference here are many of the assets used. The only other thing that I found was this little room in the church in the center of the map. I don't think this room is modeled in the final game, but please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. The last map we have is called Nightclub, also known as Plaza in the final game. This map definitely seems to be among the earliest designs, as so much was changed from the final version. Again, the general layout is here, but almost everything was changed in one way or another. There's quite a few interesting things I found in this map as well, which I cover in the Oddities. The various early and cut killstreaks are up next. Starting with the Cruise Missile, which is an earlier name for the Hellstorm Missile. It functions the exact same way as the final game's Hellstorm Missile. The Apache Gunner was an earlier name for the VTOL warship, and it acts very similar to the Chopper Gunner from Modern Warfare 2.
Be advised, AH-64D longbow inbound.
But there's also another Scorestreak simply called Gunship, but it sadly doesn't work in-game. It does, however, have a different description than Apache Gunner, suggesting there was going to be another Scorestreak like the VTOL. They so should have kept this name, but Switchblades is an earlier version of the Swarm Scorestreak, and it pretty much acts the same as the final game's Swarm. Just the models are different, as this Greenlight build doesn't even have the Hunter-Killer drone made yet. Eagle Overwatch, I believe, is an early version of the escort drone, and it pretty much acts the exact same as the AH-6 Overwatch from Modern Warfare 3 in this early stage. Satellite Recon is an earlier version of the Orbital VSAT. Its functionality is the exact same. The X-47 Pegasus was an earlier name for the Lodestar. It seems pretty close to the final version, just lacking screen effects. It even has its kill feed icon complete. Finally, we have the Shrike, which was an early version of the Dragonfire, and you can see the design was changed pretty heavily. In this stage though, it's very buggy. It seems you're only allowed to spawn it in once, no matter where you are on the map. When you try to spawn it in for a second time, you'll get completely frozen in place, and it'll give you the message Shrike is not available, and sometimes you'll get the airspace full message. This freeze even happens to bots that try to use the killstreak, so I have no idea what's going on here. As we come to the end of the video, it's time for the oddities I found throughout the game. So you may have noticed the props floating around in the earlier carrier map. These are all objects used or planned to be used around the map. This would have been an easy way for the map designers to take the objects and place them around as they needed. It's super cool seeing something like this, especially in a COD game. It honestly gives me Minecraft Debug World vibes. The early Express map has a lot of these props laid out as well, which again I think is super cool to see. I found this weird creepy black door room with some ominous red lights, this weird rainbow texture that I sadly couldn't get closer to as it gets called out, a placeholder advertisement, this cool looking digital billboard, a Russian sign under the map, a set of metal detectors, and some benches placed under the map as well. There's definitely a lot going on in this map, it's very, very cool. The early Plaza map also had some oddities. The first being that the strobe lights on the roof still have their X, Y, and Z axis displayed, which is super cool to see personally. There's a random blacked out tree near the center of the map, and finally, there's these ungodly creatures outside of the map. I'm pretty sure you can still see these characters in the final game if you want to check them out for yourself. On the early version of the map Village, there's a huge space filled with a temp texture that's supposed to represent water. It almost looks like an animated wood texture painted blue. Did you know you can use Brutus's smoke grenades in Mob of the Dead? If you use this command, you'll be given 3 of Brutus's grenades, and they actually have a unique crosshair when used by the player. They don't do any damage or anything, but they function as they normally would when you knock off Brutus's helmet. In a trailer for the game, it briefly showed a Dragonfire with the name Charlene etched into one of the rotors. It's unknown who Charlene is, or even if it's actually related to anybody. But the etching doesn't exist in the Greenlight build, the August beta build, nor does it exist in the final game. So I'm guessing this detail was either removed once it was spotted in the trailer, as it may have been an unauthorized Easter egg. It may have also only been made for the trailer, or possibly it was removed in a build that we just don't have our hands on yet. There's a few voice lines from the Richthofen head that have been data mined from earlier builds, and funnily enough, this isn't even Richthofen's voice actor. It's another developer mimicking his voice, so the decision to cut this head must have been very early on.
Hey, I'm over here! Why don't you come and pick me up? Let's play toss the head! Stop leaving me on the ground! God, it's really dirty on the ground. get your fingers out of me. Come and get me. Oh, hi. Oh, ouchie, my head. Whoa. Ah, you look great.
Did you know you can still use the Greenlight version of the M4 in the campaign mission Cordis Die? I'm sure I butchered that. It can be accessed by using the give all command, and it functions exactly the same as the Greenlight build. I believe this is the only weapon left from the Greenlight build that's still usable in the final game, and I have no idea why it's here, as it only seems to be in this one mission. The picture for the achievement header is definitely an oddity. This can be seen in the beta build from August of 2012, which was still 3 months away from release. I'm not sure if this is a developer's face or a reference to something else, but it's definitely an interesting picture choice. There's also temp loading screens for pretty much every campaign mission found in the August beta build as well. They're all basic descriptions of the mission the loading screen is for. There's also a temp loading screen simply called Default, which is just a basic 45-second timer. The last oddity I have for you is this texture viewer built right into the Greenlight build. I sadly have no idea what I did to trigger this, as I was testing a lot of different things, but I somehow activated it, and as you can see, it's viewing the textures from Mason's interrogation outfit. Very cool stuff, and if I figure out what I did to activate it, I'll post an update in the description. And that's all I have for Call of Duty Black Ops 2. There's honestly so much left over from the first Black Ops that I probably could have made an entire video on that stuff alone, but that would be boring as hell. That's why I decided to leave most of the leftovers out, but this video was still super fun to make. A lot of what you saw here was my own research and documentation, as for some reason, Black Ops 2 cut content isn't well documented. I personally didn't know about Bruce's smoke grenades being usable by the player. All these years later, and I never knew that. Anywho, if you have a suggestion for the next What Was Cut episode, please feel free to comment down below. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.